Okay, writers, welcome back. Happy Monday. Hi, Ted. How are you?
Morning. I'm doing well. How are you, Jade?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm very, very, truly happy to be back here with you and to be speaking to everyone. In full transparency, Ted and I just came off of an event, which was great. And it was great to see and speak to so many of you. But there were a few themes that came up, Ted, that I feel like we should dive into.
Yeah.
And one of them was like just a lot of reasons for people not to start, not to start this. And there were all the different reasonings. But how do you feel about this when it kept coming up?
Yeah, the reasons are many. I heard it. I'm too old. Like I'm too far along the line.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I focused in on that one primarily because that one breaks my heart a little bit. It breaks my heart that people are seeing themselves as I still don't have time to capture life the way I want to capture it.
Mm.
And to be completely honest with you, it made me think about I had my first child at 40 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And leading up to having Jackson, I probably spent 2 or 3 years stuck in that same mud of I'm too old. And I made every reason why I wasn't mentally prepared to be a father. I'm going to be too old to throw the ball with him. I mean, these are all very real. I'm not going to be able to support them financially. And the last 10 years of my life have been the most rich years of my life. And so if we were to shrink that, I don't care if you're 70, 62, whatever age, shrink it down to the next 5 years. What do you want the next 5 years of life? You don't know if the next 5 years could be the most fulfilling years of your life.
100%.
You just don't know. But we get so stuck in the mud with that. I could flip the script on that. I'm too old to, I'm too young, which again, as I thought through this, just to be transparent, I'm not trying to make this about me. I try to gain empathy, right?
Yeah.
And empathy is trying to understand the depth of the question or the depth of the fear, like I'm too old or whatever it may be. The flip of that is I'm too young. Don't have the experience. I don't have all the rest of this thing. And again, it just stops people in their tracks. And so I look back at I had all the same fears before I incorporated. I'm not going to be taken seriously. My wife will tell you, I used to say, I'm going to wait till I get gray in my beard.
Wow.
So people would take me seriously. Even though I had the burning in the belly, I still was scared as hell, but I felt like I had something to offer the world. And, unbeknownst to me, when I put it out there, all the stories in my head were eradicated because there was a pocket of people that were ready to meet me where I was. And I was younger, right? I wasn't some 60-year-old guru or some 50-year-old guru. So I just think that we have to take this one seriously. Like I did not, the people out there during the event that were saying I'm too old or I'm not have enough experience, that kind of hit my heart a little bit because I'm like, man, we got to capture life. And a statement that I'd make to these people that are thinking like that is that I don't want you to have regret. And the truth be told, I'd be lying. There's no guarantee that you're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth, right? We didn't know if we could have a child till we started trying. Like we didn't know.
Yes.
However, right, as cliche as it sounds, I'd much rather you go out and try this thing now and see what the next 5 years could look like for you than 5 years from now have that regret and the regret and the what ifs. Those things to me are much more damaging to living a fulfilled life than not trying.
Yeah.
The regret piece.
I feel like, first off, if anybody knows her, I say this all the time, Denise Ford, and you know her, Ted, I will not out her age here, but she is one of the youngest people that I know without being one of the youngest person that I know, right? Just like energy, right. And just it's mind in her mind. And that's why one of my favorite sayings is, and I won't hop in the age in too long, but one of my favorite sayings is that aging is inevitable, but getting old is optional. Right?
I love that.
So to me, no matter what stage you're at, there's always going to be reasons why something is scary and why you can't start. But you're still here and you're still breathing. And so your story is not over, right? Your story is could be just beginning. And that even if it doesn't end up in you being the 6-figure copywriter, if you don't go for it, who knows what that unreal story that is living inside of you, that is dying to come out, is potentially there. But I do think, and I just hear your words, Ted, is that the reality of whatever you're going through and the story you tell yourself is that reality. Whether you say you can, you can. Whether you say you can't, you can't. That is going to be
true.
Either way. But I don't know. I don't think failing gets any less scary no matter what stage of life you're in. That's the real hindrance. Yeah.
I agree. And maybe that is what's stuck in people's mind. Maybe it's not the age thing. That's interesting that you said that now, because that jarred this whole idea of symptom source, which I think we've touched on before. But sometimes we tell ourselves what I would say are like lies.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, I don't know how else to position it other than we chalk it up to age, or we chalk it up to something when really it's like, I don't feel I have the capacity to do it, or I'm scared of failing, and therefore I'm not going to have to, I'm too old to recreate myself, or whatever it may be. They will be the symptoms. The source is fear, right? Which
yes.
I think maybe we should lean into the fear thing next week.
Perfect.
Just because it's it does have to do with it. Yeah. And it may seem a little bit redundant, but I got to tell you, my opinion, it just keeps coming up for so many of us, this fear thing.
And I do think, like, I went through this exercise a few years ago, and I can't remember. I mean, many people do this as like thought leaders and people that are motivational speakers and trying to change the narrative for people. And it was literally just, okay, write down all the stories that you're telling yourself of why you can't, right? And then just flip it. Even if you don't believe the flip side of it, just like put those things down. Like, I'm young enough to recreate my career. I have enough experience to start over. There are plenty of clients in the world that need my work. My voice is viable and needs to be heard. Just tell yourself those. And it is something too, where even if you don't believe it in the beginning, the more you read that and the more you affirm that, it at least dulls down the voices a little bit of all the reasons of why you're not doing it.
I like that. I always like those exercises. I think it illuminates certain things for us and wakes us up a little bit. It also jarred another thing for me, and this is very true for me. This is like almost a change in the way I operate, like in life. The last 3 years really impacted me like it impacted most of us, if not all of us. And I used to be a long-term vision guy. I had big plans for the family. I had I had a 15-year vision and, et cetera. I got to tell you, like, Angel and I aren't talking about that stuff anymore. The last 3 years kind of woke us up to, we got to look just a couple years ahead. And then in a couple years, we'll reframe whatever we need to reframe. But the vision has shrunk. So I go back to the beginning of what I said. If you're in the bucket of saying I'm too old, just look at the next 3 to 5 years. What do you want the next 3 to 5 years to look like? Instead of saying, like, I've already lived most of my life. What's the sense in trying to, you know what I mean? Like, we have learned in a very intimate way what life hands us.
Yeah.
Like in the last 3 years, we've got stuck in our houses, people lost the economy, the war, all this different stuff. They're all just really reminders of what we already knew, which is we're not guaranteed anything and we got to grab life. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but it's true.
You know what I love so much about that as well is I think sometimes we give ourselves the excuse of time. In 1 year, I'll have my LinkedIn profile up and I would have gone through 10 AWAI programs, right? Well, you can get your LinkedIn profile up in a day and you can get through an AWAI, like really comprehensive, able to get a client program in a month to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think when you shrink down the deadline, that also adds, like, sometimes, I've talked about this before, sometimes like pressure is positive because it gets you moving action soon.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that I really, really like that one of like shrinking down the deadline. And then it also takes away any of those excuses of that we started out with, because those go by the wayside. Because I think even in 6 months, you can get this up and going. Look, if you ever need inspiration or think that I'm talking baloney, go to our website and look at our case studies of all the inspirational people. It's so funny. Before we got on here, Ted, I was reading about Jessica McKay, who hers all happened during the pandemic, right? Where she wasn't feeling she was in the career of coaching. And before she left, she needed to match her career income, sorry. And she started writing. And before she finished the course, it was like a month or 2 months, she got one client that matched what she was making in coaching. And within like 2 months, it was like 2 months, she was already at like 6 figures. So look, there's
it happens.
Yeah. Okay, so Ted, what is homework for today? What do we need? What does everybody need to hone in on? We've thrown a couple of things out today.
Yeah, I think this 3 to 5 years, I'd want people to hone in on the symptom source thing, really.
Okay.
Like, is the age thing really the issue? And I'm not denying that that's a real thing. So please don't hear me that I'm dismissing that, as much as I'm saying, if you were to look at the next 3 to 5 years, is it really, first of all, if you shrunk that down, is that really the thing? Or is it just simply that you're scared of failure or whatever it may be? Start from a place of truth. And then the main message, and this is just a reflection point, as much as maybe it's not homework, as much as like, you said it, you're still breathing.
Yes.
And if you take anything from me, I use the example of becoming a father at 40, because I didn't know what was ahead of me. But when I got out of all my fears, the next 10 years, meaning the last 10 years, were the most fulfilling of my life. You don't know if that's what's in front of you, but you're not going to know unless you go out here and try it.
Boom. I love that. Okay, beautiful. And then everyone, next week, we've talked about it before, but I don't think we can ever talk about it enough. The big topic of FEAR, fear. We're going to get into that a bit more. Thank you, Ted, so much. We'll see you next week.
Amen. See you next week.